Hidden behind England's picturesque villages are places so haunted, even locals refuse to go near them after dark. From cursed skulls that scream to phantom funeral processions on misty lanes, these ancient settlements are steeped in terror. Tonight, we uncover the UK's most haunted villages, where the past doesn't stay buried. Dare you join us as we step into the shadows? Help us reach 1,000 subscribers before September 2025. Hit subscribe now and join our ghost hunting family. Every click brings us closer to uncovering more chilling tales. 1. Pluckley, Kent. Pluckley, a small village in Kent, is often called the most haunted village in England. With over a dozen documented ghosts, it has earned a terrifying reputation. The village dates back to ancient times, and its dark history is filled with tragic deaths, restless spirits, and eerie sightings that continue to frighten locals and visitors alike. One of the most famous ghosts is the Red Lady, a sorrowful spirit said to haunt St. Nicholas churchyard. She was a noble woman who died of a broken heart after losing her child. Dressed in a flowing red gown, she wanders the graveyard, weeping near a particular tomb. Many have reported seeing her glowing figure at dusk, only for her to vanish into the mist. Another terrifying apparition is the highwayman, who lurks near Fright Corner. This ghost is believed to be the spirit of a robber who was killed when he got trapped in a hollow tree. His groans and the sound of rustling leaves are often heard at night. Locals avoid this spot after dark, fearing they might see his shadowy figure or hear his desperate cries. The Watercress Woman is another well-known ghost. She was an old woman who sold watercress in the village and died when she accidentally set herself on fire while smoking a pipe. Her charred, hunched figure has been seen near the stream where she once worked. Some claim to smell burning flesh when she appears. Even the local pub, the Black Horse, is haunted. A former landlord, who hanged himself in the building, is said to move objects and whisper in people's ears. Staff and customers have reported glasses smashing on their own and unseen hands touching them in empty rooms. The village's eerie atmosphere is made worse by the Screaming Woods, officially known as Deering Woods. These dense forests are said to be filled with tormented spirits. Visitors have heard blood-curdling screams, even though no one is around. Some believe the woods are cursed, possibly due to ancient pagan rituals or tragic deaths from centuries past. Pluckley's hauntings have been investigated by paranormal experts, and many TV shows have featured its ghosts. Yet, despite all the attention, the village remains a place of fear for those who live there. Locals tell stories passed down through generations, warning children not to wander alone at night. Whether it's the ghostly schoolmaster who still walks the ruins of the old school or the phantom coach horses that thunder down the lanes, Pluckley's past never seems to rest. Even skeptics who visit often leave convinced that something unnatural lingers in this ancient village. The air feels heavier here, and the silence is often broken by whispers from the unseen. For those brave enough to explore, Pluckley offers a chilling glimpse into a world where the dead refuse to stay buried. 2. Prestine, Powys. Prestine, a quiet village in Powys, Wales, hides a dark and haunted past. Tucked near the English border, this ancient market town looks peaceful by day, but as night falls, locals say the dead awaken. The most famous ghost here is the ghostly judge, a terrifying figure seen in the old courthouse. Long ago, a cruel judge known for handing out harsh punishments died suddenly in his chambers. Some say his spirit never left. Even today, visitors report hearing gavel bangs in empty courtrooms and seeing a shadowy figure in old-fashioned robes glaring from the benches. Others claim to feel an icy grip on their shoulders, as if the judge is still passing sentence from beyond the grave. Another chilling legend is the phantom horses of Prestine. Late at night, the sound of galloping hooves echoes through the streets, though no horses are ever seen. The story goes that centuries ago, a group of soldiers rode through town in a storm, desperate to escape a bloody battle. Their horses slipped on the wet cobblestones, sending them crashing to their deaths. Now, their panicked ride repeats forever in the darkness. Locals lock their doors when they hear the ghostly hoofbeats, believing those who see the riders will meet a grim fate. The Radnorshire Arms, an old inn in the village, is also haunted. Staff and guests have reported a woman in Victorian dress drifting through the halls, her face filled with sorrow. Some believe she was a heartbroken bride who died waiting for a lover who never returned. Others say she was a servant girl who took her own life in one of the upstairs rooms. Either way, her presence lingers, doors slam on their own, glasses shatter without cause, and cold spots freeze the air around her favorite corners. Even the churchyard of St. Andrew's Church is not safe from the supernatural. A ghostly monk has been seen kneeling by an ancient grave, his lips moving in silent prayer. Some say he guards a cursed burial site, while others believe he is a lost soul seeking forgiveness for a terrible sin. Those who get too close claim to hear faint whispers in Old Welsh, sending chills down their spines. Prestine's haunted history is woven into its streets, its buildings, and the whispers of those who live there. Few dare to walk alone after midnight, for fear of encountering the judge's cold stare, the phantom horse's endless ride, or the weeping woman in the inn. The village may seem like a quiet Welsh retreat, but its ghosts ensure that its past is never truly forgotten. 3 Brigo Turk, Scotland. Nestled deep in the Scottish Highlands, the tiny village of Brigo Turk seems peaceful at first glance, until night falls. Then, locals say, the White Lady walks. This lonely stretch of road near Loch Acray has been haunted for centuries by the spirit of a heartbroken woman who died tragically long ago. According to legend, she was a young bride left at the altar when her groom never arrived for their wedding. Some say he was killed in battle, others whisper he abandoned her for another woman. Whatever the truth, the devastated woman threw herself from the old stone bridge into the freezing waters below, and her spirit has haunted the area ever since. Drivers passing the bridge at night report seeing a pale figure in a flowing white dress standing near the water's edge. Some claim their cars suddenly lose power when they approach the bridge, as if an unseen force refuses to let them pass. Those who stop to investigate often hear soft weeping coming from the darkness, though no one is ever there. The most chilling accounts tell of a ghostly woman appearing in the back seat of cars, her hollow eyes filled with sadness before she vanishes into thin air. The nearby woods are said to be just as haunted. Hikers have reported seeing the White Lady drifting between the trees, her wedding dress glowing faintly in the moonlight. Some have heard ghostly wedding music playing from nowhere, followed by heartbreaking sobs. There are stories of cameras failing to work near the bridge, as if the White Lady refuses to be photographed. Even during the day, visitors report feeling watched and an overwhelming sense of sadness near the water. Local legend warns that anyone who sees the White Lady 3 times will meet with misfortune. Some say she appears to those about to experience heartbreak of their own. The villagers of Brigo Turk have long respected the ghost's territory, with many refusing to cross the bridge after dark. Some leave small offerings of flowers by the water's edge, hoping to calm the restless spirit. Despite its beautiful surroundings, there's an undeniable chill in the air around Brigo Turk, a reminder that some heartaches never fade, even in death. The White Lady's eternal vigil continues, her sorrow as deep as the loch that claimed her life, waiting forever for a wedding day that will never come. 4 Pendle, Lancashire. The village of Pendle in Lancashire is forever shadowed by one of England's darkest chapters, the infamous Pendle witch trials of 1612. This quiet countryside village, with its rolling hills and ancient stone cottages, might seem peaceful today, but the echoes of its violent past still linger. 12 people were accused of witchcraft here, and 10 were hanged, leaving behind a legacy of curses and ghostly unrest. Locals swear the spirits of the condemned witches still roam the land, seeking justice or perhaps revenge. The most famous haunting is tied to Alice Nutter, one of the accused witches. Unlike the others, Alice was a wealthy woman, which made her conviction even more shocking. She refused to speak in her own defense and was executed at Lancaster Castle. Today, her ghost is said to appear near Roughlee, the village where she once lived. Witnesses describe a woman in old-fashioned clothing walking silently along the country lanes before vanishing into thin air. Some claim to hear whispered pleas for mercy on the wind, while others report sudden cold spots in the middle of summer, as if Alice's presence still chills the air. Pendle Hill itself is a hotspot for paranormal activity. Many who climb it report an overwhelming sense of being watched, even when completely alone. Strange lights have been seen dancing near the summit at night, and some hikers have heard eerie chanting in an unknown language. Legend says this is where the witches held their covens, and their rituals left a permanent mark on the land. Even animals seem to sense something unnatural. Dogs often whimper or refuse to go near certain spots on the hillside. The old Malkin Tower, where the accused witches supposedly gathered, is long gone, but the field where it once stood is said to be cursed. Locals avoid it after dark, telling stories of shadowy figures moving between the trees and unexplained fires that appear and disappear in an instant. Some believe the witches' spirits gather here, still practicing the magic that condemned them. Others say the land itself is angry, unwilling to forget the innocent blood spilled upon it. Even Pendle's pubs aren't free from the supernatural. The Pendle Witch Inn is rumored to be haunted by one of the accused, a woman named Chattox. Staff have reported glasses sliding off tables by themselves, doors locking with no explanation, and the faint smell of burning herbs in empty rooms. Some guests have woken in the night to see an old woman standing at the foot of their bed, her face twisted in silent accusation before she fades away. To this day, the people of Pendle live with the weight of their village's grim history. Some still practice old folk charms to ward off evil, hanging rowan branches over their doors or carrying iron nails in their pockets for protection. Whether the hauntings are real or just the product of centuries of fear, one thing is certain: Pendle's witches have never truly left. Their stories are whispered in the pubs, their faces seem to watch from the shadows, and their restless spirits ensure that what happened in 1612 will never be forgotten. The air in Pendle always feels heavy, as if the past is waiting just beneath the surface, ready to remind the living that some wounds never heal. 5. Anwick, Lincolnshire. The quiet Lincolnshire village of Anwick holds a peculiar and terrifying secret, the legend of the Screaming Skull. This ancient tale centers around a small, yellowed human skull kept in a glass case inside a local cottage. According to village lore, the skull belonged to a servant named Dickie, who worked for the wealthy Bowyer family centuries ago. On his deathbed, Dickie made a strange request, that his skull remain in the house forever. If ever removed, he warned, unearthly screams would echo through the village and misfortune would follow. Over the years, skeptical residents have tried to rid the house of its grim relic, only to be met with terrifying consequences. When one family buried the skull in the churchyard, blood-curdling shrieks allegedly erupted from the grave at night, keeping the entire village awake. Horses panicked, dogs howled, and furniture moved by itself inside the Bowyer home. The disturbances only stopped when the skull was dug up and returned to its rightful place. Another attempt to throw it into the local river ended similarly. The water supposedly turned red and violent knocking sounds came from within the walls of nearby houses until the skull was recovered. Those who live near the skull's resting place report constant paranormal activity. Unexplained cold drafts sweep through rooms even in summer, objects vanish only to reappear days later, and many claim to have seen the ghostly figure of a man missing his head wandering the cottage grounds at twilight. The most chilling accounts come from overnight visitors who swear they've heard agonized wailing coming from the glass case containing the skull, as if Dickie's spirit remains trapped in agony. Scientists who have examined the skull found it dates back to the 18th century, but could offer no explanation for the alleged phenomena. The current caretakers treat the relic with wary respect, refusing to move it or allow it to be photographed, fearing another outbreak of supernatural retaliation. Village children dare each other to touch the cottage walls after dark, though few actually follow through, the weight of history and fear of awakening whatever force protects the skull proving too strong. Anwick's Screaming Skull remains one of England's most bizarre and well-documented paranormal artifacts. Whether one believes in curses or not, the fact remains that for over 200 years, no one has successfully removed the skull from its appointed home. The people of Anwick have learned the hard way that some promises, even those made centuries ago by dying men, are better left unbroken. To this day, when the wind howls through the Lincolnshire fens at night, older villagers glance nervously toward the cottage and whisper that Dickie is restless again. 6. Gretna Green, Scotland. Gretna Green, the famous Scottish village where young English lovers once fled to marry against their family's wishes, holds a darker secret beneath its romantic reputation. The old blacksmith's shop, where countless hurried weddings took place, is said to be haunted by the ghost of the original anvil priest, a spectral figure still performing phantom marriages in the dead of night. Workers closing up shop have reported hearing the clang of a hammer striking metal long after the forge has gone cold, and some claim to have seen shadowy figures of a young couple standing at the anvil, their ghostly hands clasped together as an unseen presence recites wedding vows. But the most tragic spirit belongs to a young bride who died on her wedding day. Local legend tells of a beautiful English girl who collapsed at the altar in 1825, her heart giving out from exhaustion after the frantic journey to Scotland. Her grief-stricken groom buried her in the local churchyard, only to take his own life days later. Now, on certain foggy nights, witnesses report seeing a veiled woman in a tattered wedding dress wandering between the gravestones, her progress followed by the sound of quiet sobbing. Those who approach too closely claim to feel overwhelming despair and the scent of funeral flowers thick in the air. The old coaching inn where many runaway couples stayed now hosts more permanent guests. Room 11 is particularly feared. Multiple guests have reported waking to find a spectral groom standing at the foot of their bed, his face twisted in anguish. Others have heard phantom horses arriving at midnight, followed by the sound of a woman screaming, perhaps echoing some long-forgotten tragedy when a carriage met with disaster on the nearby roads. Staff tell of glasses that slide untouched across tables, doors that lock themselves, and the persistent smell of smoke when no fire burns in the hearth. Even the famous Greta Green marriage bench carries a curse. Couples who sit on it after dark have reported feeling unseen hands pushing them apart, and local legend says any marriage begun after sitting on the bench at midnight is doomed to end in tragedy. The village's romantic history seems to have left behind echoes of heartbreak and loss that refuse to fade. While daytime visitors come seeking Greta Green's famous wedding traditions, those who linger after sunset often leave with stories they can't explain, of ghostly whispers in empty rooms, phantom carriages on old roads, and the lingering presence of lovers whose vows lasted beyond death itself. The village may celebrate love, but its shadows remember all the romances that ended in sorrow. 7 Chillingham, Northumberland. Chillingham village in Northumberland is home to one of Britain's most haunted castles, but the surrounding village hides its own dark secrets. The tiny settlement, nestled in England's rugged northern countryside, has been touched by centuries of violence and suffering, leaving behind scars that never fully healed. The villagers live with whispers of the past, where ghostly figures roam the narrow lanes after sunset and anguished cries echo from empty buildings. The most famous spirit is the Blue Boy, a child whose tortured screams have been heard in the dead of night. According to local legend, workers restoring a cottage near the castle walls discovered the skeletal remains of a young boy hidden behind an ancient brick wall. He was dressed in blue clothing, his hands twisted as if he had been buried alive. Since then, villagers report seeing a pale blue glow moving through the darkness, accompanied by the sound of a child sobbing. Some claim to have woken in the night to find the ghostly boy standing at their bedside, his eyes wide with fear before he vanishes into the shadows. The old village churchyard is another hotspot for paranormal activity. A mysterious, white lady has been seen floating between the gravestones, her face hidden by a veil. Local history suggests she may have been a noblewoman who died of grief after losing her entire family to plague or violence. Those who encounter her speak of an overwhelming sadness that lingers in the air, and some have reported seeing her kneel before a particular grave before disappearing into the mist. Dogs often whine and refuse to enter the churchyard, as if sensing something human eyes cannot see. Even the village pub isn't free from ghostly visitors. The staff tell stories of a former landlord who still tends the bar long after his death. Glasses move on their own, beer taps turn on without explanation, and the sound of laughter comes from empty corners. Some customers claim to have seen a shadowy figure sitting alone in the snug, only for him to disappear when approached. Others report the smell of old-fashioned pipe tobacco drifting through the room, though no one present is smoking. The darkest legends, however, come from the ruins of the old village jail. Locals avoid the crumbling stone structure after dark, telling stories of ghostly prisoners still chained to the walls. On quiet nights, the sound of rattling chains and desperate pleas for mercy can be heard drifting across the fields. Some believe these are the echoes of Scottish prisoners taken during border wars centuries ago, left to die in the cold, damp cells. Chillingham's ghosts seem tied to the village's violent history, wars, plagues, and the harsh punishments of medieval justice. The air feels heavier here, as if the past is pressing in on the present. Visitors often describe an uneasy feeling of being watched, even in broad daylight. While the castle's famous ghosts draw tourists, the village itself holds quieter, but no less terrifying, spirits. The people of Chillingham have learned to live with their haunted home, but they know better than to wander the lanes after dark. Some doors, they say, are better left unopened, and some shadows are best left undisturbed. 8 Dartmouth, Devon. Dartmouth, the picturesque Devon harbour town with its colourful houses and bobbing fishing boats, hides a dark and haunted past behind its cheerful facade. The narrow, winding streets that climb steeply from the waterfront have witnessed centuries of maritime tragedies, violent smuggling operations, and gruesome executions, leaving behind restless spirits that refuse to fade away. Locals speak in hushed tones about the phantom sailors who still roam the docks, their ghostly forms appearing in the rolling sea mists that creep into town on autumn nights. One of the most frequently seen apparitions is the headless sailor, who stalks the old Butterwalk area near the harbour. According to local legend, he was a young naval officer beheaded for treason during the Napoleonic Wars, his body thrown into the Dart River while his head was displayed on a spike as a warning. Fishermen returning after dark report seeing a headless figure in a tattered uniform standing silently on the quay, while others have heard anguished moans coming from empty alleyways. Some claim the smell of rotting seaweed and gunpowder suddenly fills the air when he appears, a grim reminder of his violent end. The historic Bayards Cove, once the site of public executions, is another paranormal hotspot. Visitors report feeling unseen hands pushing them near the old stone walls, while others have captured ghostly figures in photographs, shadowy shapes hanging in midair where the gallows once stood. The most disturbing accounts come from those who have heard phantom crowds cheering and the sickening crack of a whip long after midnight, as if the cove is replaying its brutal history for those sensitive enough to perceive it. The Cherub Inn, one of Dartmouth's oldest pubs, is haunted by a very different kind of spirit. A mischievous ghost nicknamed Charlie by the staff plays with electrical equipment, turns beer taps on and off, and moves chairs around when no one is looking. But the cellar holds a darker secret. Workers refuse to go down alone after multiple people reported seeing a woman in grey crouched in the corner, her face hidden by long, wet hair. Some believe she was a drowned smuggler's wife who comes back searching for her lost love. Perhaps the most tragic ghost is the crying boy of St. Saviour's Church. During a 17th century plague outbreak, a young child was accidentally buried alive in the churchyard. Now, visitors report hearing a child's faint sobs coming from beneath a particular gravestone, especially on stormy nights. Others have seen small handprints appearing on the church windows, on the inside, though no child was present in the locked building. Dartmouth's ghosts seem particularly tied to the sea that gives the town life. The sound of ghostly oars splashing in the harbour, the smell of burning tar from long-vanished ships, and the eerie glow of phantom lanterns moving across the water all testify to the town's haunted maritime history. Locals have learned to accept these supernatural occurrences as part of living in Dartmouth, though few dare to walk the ancient streets alone after dark. The past here is never truly gone, it lingers in the salt air, whispers in the ocean breeze, and sometimes, on foggy nights, reaches out to touch the living.